Welcome to Creating a Connected Culture. I'm your host, Mark Ostach. Very thankful to have on our show today Rosalie Berne from Thermo Fisher Scientific. Rosalie is a new friend of mine that we've had a chance to know over the past 6 months or so. Rosalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, how are you doing today?
Fantastic.
Rosalie, just why don't you share with the audience how you and I have had a chance to know each other?
Yes, so I work for Thermo Fisher Scientific, and this year, for the first time, we had to do a global commercial meeting virtually because of the pandemic. And because we knew a lot of people have been struggling with mental health and being online all the time because there's no escape, we invited you to come and give one of your amazing talks to our global team about digital mental health, how to disconnect. And it reached over 1,000 people, I think. And it was fantastic. And I just felt your positive energy. And I'm a proponent of focusing on mental health. So I followed up and we started talking and we haven't stopped.
The rest is history, right? I felt like on our first call, we had just had that shared mindset of helping others create a mindset of positivity, optimism, but most importantly, kind of resilience with the seasons of life we go in and out of. And one thing that I always enjoyed hearing about you is just learning a little bit about your background, both from where you're from and even having a chance to get to know your mom, which I'll get into in a minute. But just if you could do two things, just share with the audience where you're from and then what you do at Thermo Fisher.
Yeah, so I was born in England, but neither of my parents are English, even though people tell me I'm very English. I was born and raised in England, but I moved to Israel and lived there for a few years, where I met my husband, and we moved to Portland, Oregon, where he and his family are from, and that's where I am today, working for Thermo Fisher in Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And as I've kind of heard that backstory, when we were discussing one of our first engagements together and thinking through how can we create a meaningful experience for your team that really spans the globe in this beautiful world of virtual living, leading, and learning, I got the wild idea of maybe we should talk to your mom. And you thought, well, you know, she is retired and she's there in England, and one thing led to another, and I had a chance to interview your mom. And there's a picture on the screen there with your mom, Ellen, and she shared just some incredible insights of how she's maintained a spirit of positivity and even a very detailed life kind of journaling exercise that she's been doing for many, many years, where she just documented her life affairs. And it tied in beautifully to our message, which was centered around gratitude and journaling. So, yeah, that was special. That was a really special experience.
She really enjoyed it too.
So one of the things that we like to do in our time together, I like to do, and you've experienced, but we're going to model this for those tuning in right now, is there's an exercise called If You Really Knew Me. And the intention behind this is to create what I like to refer to as virtual vulnerability, where we're having a chance to connect more meaningful by sharing statements that are vulnerable in nature and creating intimacy in our connections. So to that end, I would like to invite you, I'll model it just as a quick reminder to how it feels and goes. And then I'm going to pass it to you to share some statements that the audience will get a chance to know you on a more personal level. Fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. So if you really knew me, you'd know that this morning I started my day by yelling at my son. If you really knew me, you'd know that I also ended my day yesterday by talking to a Asian and Chinese audience through your organization. That was a growth moment where I had a chance to slow my pace and think through the cultural differences that I often don't think about as an American. If you really knew me, you'd know that I'm going to a concert with my wife tonight and my mom's babysitting, and I couldn't be more ecstatic. And if you really knew me, you'd know that when this interview is done, I'm going to have a big meal. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to turn it over to you. And if we really knew Rosalie.
If you really knew me, you would know that every morning I get up and have a cup of tea. And in fact, tea is my stress relief. And people always ask me before they meet me, have you had your cup of tea yet? Because they know I'll be more relaxed when they talk to me. If you really knew me at all, you know I get up really early. I'm an early bird. I'm much better in the mornings than I am late at night when I'm working. I get up probably around 5 o'clock every day, if not earlier. If you knew me at all, you would know that every morning I check on my son before I start work, because he lives in Tel Aviv, and if you read the headlines, you understand why I'm always checking in on him. If you really knew me at all, later in the day, at the end of my day, I check in with my daughter, who's a lawyer in Los Angeles, which means if you really knew me at all, you know I was a typical Jewish mother who can't let my children lead independent lives. Yeah. And if you knew me at all, you would know I'm busy all day.
Let's get some snaps for Rosalie. That is so good. I love it. And even as you shared those things, I'm learning new insights of the behaviors and habits that drive the real you. So I appreciate your concern, and I understand as a newer parent what it's like to want to keep a pulse on your children.
Yeah.
I'm going to add, if you really knew Rosalie, you would see this wonderful picture of her that her mom, Ellen, shared. You can't see it, Rosalie, but the audience can. And then if you really knew Rosalie, you'd also see this picture, which I think you were probably around 5 years old. It's with the green dress. It looks like a painting from royalty in England. But it also reminds me of just the fact that we came from these childlike states and we're born into the world, and we get educated, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are, or here you are, leading an operations team with a global life science company that's doing some amazing work. To that end, I'd love just to hear a little bit about, if you can just share, who Thermo Fisher is, what they do, and then more specifically, we'll dive into how your team's staying connected during the hybrid work world.
Yes, so Thermo Fisher Scientific is a huge company with many divisions. And I love Thermo Fisher's mission, which is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. I think anybody can get behind that mission, and it really energizes you every day to think that's what you're helping your customers do. I work for one of the divisions called Materials Structural Analysis, and we sell electron microscopes as well as jewel beams, which have ion beams on them. I won't go into the technical scientific details of that, but basically our customers span the life science industry, the materials science industry, and the semiconductor industry. So we touch basically the whole world. Whether it's technology, the chips being made that go into computers, your monitors, your cell phones, whether it's material science, looking at batteries, looking at the auto industry, or looking at research on many materials, or life science. And it was very exciting that our microscopes helped scientists identify the protein structure of the current COVID-19 virus, and helping speed up generating the vaccinations, which I hope everyone has or is getting and is available to them today.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible just how large of an impact your organization and the scientists and engineers and operations folks have an impact right now in the current kind of state of the pandemic. But to that end, I'm curious to know, just paint a picture a little bit about the size of your team, and then ways that you are finding as a leader to keep them connected in a hybrid workplace.
Yeah, so I directly manage over 120 employees around the world. I also indirectly touch many other areas and work with other areas of the company. But the challenge for my team being global is you have to be tuned in on what's going on in that country, in that region every day, every week. For example, at the beginning of the pandemic, everything was happening over in Asia, in China primarily. And so very concerned how the team in China was operating. And then as it migrated, it hits, I have teams in Europe and team in America. And so you have to be very tuned in to what's going on in their world, what to make sure they're physically protected, as well as making sure they're equipped to continue to do their job and any other support they need. And as I said at the beginning, mental health to me is very important. Another thing about me, I'm the daughter of a psychiatrist, so I grew up knowing that mental health was important. And it's very important that you stay connected, not just checking in on how the business is going. You know, how many orders have we booked? Have we invoiced these customers? Are we meeting what the customers need? But also actually saying, how are you? And waiting for them to tell you and pushing them to tell you how they really are. So the pandemic has been a whole cycle of waves of focusing on different areas of the world. And now we're all coming through it together at different rates.
Yeah, I think that that's hits a point that a lot of leaders are experiencing, which is what are the ways in especially what feels like a 24/7 world where we can be constantly working. What are the ways that we're finding the time to check in with our employees and our team members? I feel like you naturally have that tendency, both with your background growing up. And I'll actually add an asterisk. You grew up in a psychiatric hospital. Can you just paint the picture about what on earth, like how did you grow up in a psychiatric hospital, and what was it one of the biggest takeaways you took away from that experience?
Yeah, so I always throw people when I say I grew up in a psychiatric hospital. But as I said, my late father was a psychiatrist at the hospital. And in those days, these hospitals were big, Victorian, huge places where in the middle of nowhere, and all the doctors and nurses would live around the hospital. So I grew up in the grounds of the hospital. And so my normal was schizophrenic patients, personality disorder patients, in those days called manic depressive patients, but today is known as bipolar, and people with depression, as well as dementia, all the different range of dementia. So that was my kind of normal, was seeing all these people suffering from those illnesses and realizing how severe mental illness is. And people don't really understand it. It's easier to understand someone with a physical illness, or, you know, they've broken a leg or broken an arm. But when something's gone wrong in the brain, you can't see it. So it's much harder to understand. I also, so that's why I grew up in a psychiatric hospital.
That makes sense. And I'm glad to hear that you weren't a patient in your youth growing up. You were more a bystander looking into. Yeah. Well,
yeah, although my parents told me that I was, you know, that's why we were living there. I guess I never asked that question if there was any other reason.
Yes. If you really knew Rosalie, you know that.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, having this unique background into mental health, being in a position where you've probably experienced burnout and overwhelm before, how are you encouraging your team members to mitigate burnout or prevent it from their experiences right now?
Yes. So, well, first of all, one of the things I encourage people to do is to block time on their calendar every day to take a break. It's really important that you put that time on your calendar, so that otherwise the day goes by and you haven't moved from your computer, which is so easy to do. You've really got to force yourself to get up and take a break. So I've asked my team to make sure they block times on their calendar every day. The other thing, and this is something I've just started recently, is to have meetings start at 10 past the hour instead of on the hour. And by having your meeting start 10 minutes later, it gives you that buffer between meetings to get up, walk around, to stretch, to go and get that cup of tea, to, you know, go to the loo or whatever else you need to do. But blocking time and then having meetings start with those 10-minute buffers during the day really makes a difference to your day.
Yeah, that's great. We talked about that strategy before, and even looking at how busy your calendar was, but seeing those red blocks, I think a lot of individuals could benefit from having the autonomy to do that and feeling empowered. I know one of Thermo Fisher's core values is intensity, and I think that just as much as we need to be intense with the way we approach work, we need to be equally as intense to the way we approach our personal, mental, and kind of physical well-being. So,
Absolutely. And I'm not going to plug Microsoft, but Microsoft Outlook have just released a new tool called Insights. And I really recommend people use it because Insights helps you block focus time. It has AI in there that will look at your calendar and suggest focus time. It'll also suggest you block your lunch time every day. So I'm really starting to use Insights in Microsoft, and it really feeds that focus on making sure you take time for yourself.
speaking of insights, I'm glad to hear Microsoft getting on the digital wellness bandwagon, as others should. But there's a different form of insights that's a personality assessment through Dynamics, the organization. Grab behind you that little block of insights that you have, and tell the audience a little bit about how Thermo Fisher is using the insights assessment tool and where you land in the in kind of
I'll
the
share
color
this.
schema.
Yeah, so Insights, this is a really useful tool to assess yourself and your team. And it really talks about, goes to what your strengths are, and it helps understand how you communicate, which helps people understand how to communicate with you. So, for example, I'm very red, and very red says be brief, be bright, be gone, which means if you send me a long email full of way too many details, it's going to be really hard for me to read through it and respond to you like you need me to. It's much easier for me if you put a high-level summary. However, if I'm communicating with a blue person, which is give me the details, I need to make sure that I'm giving them enough details in order that they can do what I'm asking them to do. So I have to really flex to deal with details in my communication. And so it's a really useful tool to know, for people to know how to communicate with me, whether it's verbally or whether it's on email. And also, it helps me know when I need to flex to communicate. I have a lot of blue people on my team, which I need, because you need all the different types of people on your team, because diversity is not just about ethnicity, it's also about personality types. So you need all types to have a really good team, and we do. And it's just a really useful tool for communication for everybody.
I love it. That's been a great insight, no pun intended, to getting to know new employees as you onboard them into the organization. Using that tool as another layer of knowing. And in a virtual environment, you can have your insight blocks in reach, so that way, as you're talking with new people, you can use it as another icebreaker way of letting them know, hey, Rosalie's more on the red. Try to be brief when you're giving her an update, as opposed to maybe a long-winded, casual, dialogue that can happen if you have two blues on the line.
Yeah, and also on email, when someone sends me a very long, detailed email, I'll park it to read later in the day, because in my morning I'm scan reading, and there's no way I can scan read a very long, detailed email.
Yes, they call it F reading, and you read in the letter F. You scan the headline, go down, scan the middle, and then just drop down in the bottom to see if there's a call to action. Your eyes literally track in the letter F.
Right. And if you're a red person, that's what you do most of the time, which means sometimes you miss the point of the email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what's one way or strategy that you believe? Well, actually, let me ask: is the future of the workforce at Thermo Fisher, is the foreseeable future a hybrid workplace?
It really depends on your role and responsibility. What we're doing is we're encouraging people to come back into the office for collaboration. So yes, the answer to your question is, especially for global commercial operations, a hybrid model is what we're looking at, because we find that people still need that focus time, and as well as time to juggle their stuff they need to do for their home life, that we're finding a hybrid model is probably the best model in order to have the best balance between teamwork, collaboration, as well as focused time to get your work done, as well as helping the environment with not driving into the office every day.
Yes, that's been a huge, huge benefit. I know, having commuted for 45 minutes, one way for 15 years, and now not having that, I find more space to be with the kids, or,
Yeah, as
or
well,
work, or yeah.
sorry, as well as the other thing we're just testing is we've actually hired full-time remote people. So now we can look at talent outside of our local area. So we're experimenting with that because we've usually been a very office-based team, and we're experimenting with some remote hires where they're 100% remote. We're in Oregon. We have actually someone in Texas, someone in California, and we're testing how that's going to work out.
Yeah, it's interesting. There seems to be a lot of testing going on, right? I heard another leader pose the statement, "Run the experiment," which was another way of saying, before you, and I know this can be harder to do in a global operations, but if you have an idea that you're looking to test, before you seek a business case and funding for the year and the other things that kind of go when you're trying to roll something out to an organization, just run the experiment with your small team of 5 or 50 or 15. And
Right.
then if you can get some traction in that space, then you can find yourself with a more viable business case that's more refined. Do you believe in that kind of philosophy about running the experiment? And if so, is there any experiments that you're running right now?
Yes, so you have to be careful, but yeah, I mean, we're trying this model in America with having remote employees, because it's all about making sure you're hiring the right talent. And the other thing is we are also experimenting it in Europe, and that's what we're looking at right now. I don't really want to discuss anything else.
Sure. No, that's great. I appreciate that. And then, just as kind of a bit of a maybe an opportunity to let those that are listening, Thermo Fisher is hiring right now, correct? Can you
Yes,
just speak to?
yes,
Yeah.
sorry, very, very actively hiring. So the pandemic for Thermo Fisher, because we're in the science world, also created opportunities. We have new business growing. We're working a lot with the pharma industry. The semiconductor world is growing, and so we're growing. And there's a lot of hiring and opportunities going on at Thermo Fisher today. I suggest you go to the Thermo Fisher website and look at all the great opportunities around the world. We're hiring around the world, and it's a very exciting time as we grow and we keep developing new businesses to help meet the changes in the environment that we see happening all the time.
Well, I am here to say firsthand that it is an organization that models the values that they put out on their website. Having a chance to work with various leaders over the past 6 months, you specifically, Rosalie, I can tell that it's a culture that you want to stay at, grow with, work at, and it's a really special place that's in I would even consider a hyper growth mode. There's a lot of opportunities to plug in. So. As we wrap up our time together, I'm just so grateful to have a chance to share some of the insights that we've both gained collectively on ways that we're engaging and managing both kind of the quarterly sessions that we've had a chance to speak some life into employees that are looking to gain some of the soft skills beyond the technical skills on how to navigate this hybrid work world and separate from our screens from time to time and give space in our calendars for our mental and emotional health. Is there anything else on your mind that you feel like you want to share or offer to feel complete with today's time?
I think it's very important that when you ask someone how they are and how are you doing, how's your day, that you let them actually answer you, that you don't just accept, I'm fine, thanks, how are you? Good, I'm good, thanks, how are you? Because I think today, and I think most people know this, but it's good to keep the awareness, is that there's a lot more going on in people's lives than the actual specific thing you're talking to them about. And I think it's really important that you ask them, how are they? And if they just say, good, thank you, you say, no, really, how are you? Tell me how you are. And I think you learn a lot more that's going on with people, which helps you understand them, which helps you work better together, and opportunities to help them. Thermo Fisher also has a great medical program where we get to have a lot of resources for mental health support, as well as many other things. And so that's what I would say, is ask people how they are and let them really tell you.
I love it. One of the things that we've talked about in separate conversations is, in some cultures, they say, what's the state of your heart? As opposed to, how are you? Two different questions that elicit two different responses. And I think that the happy medium is to say, when you ask somebody how they are, have a general concern for their response, and then maybe pivot your agenda of the meeting if they aren't doing well. This might be a time for intervention or an opportunity to speak life into them based on the experiences you hold, or even the authority that you have over their, the kind of, if you're their manager, you have the chance to interpret how they could maybe remove some of the load from their workload to take care of what it is that they need to take care of.
Yeah, I think a leader is all about, as a leader, I always look at how do I remove barriers for people
Yes.
to get their work done successfully.
Yes. Well, Rosalie, this has been just such a joy. I'm very grateful to have you on the show today. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate, in our short time together, getting a chance to know you and having you challenge me in some spaces as I grow to reach a global audience, knowing the nuances of different areas of the world, and knowing that at the end of the day, we all have hearts and emotions, and the need to balance our work and our life and integrate those together as we grow into the future of the workforce. So Rosalie, we'll wave goodbye to our audience, and we'll even say hi to your mom, Ellen. You made an appearance with a picture, and we're really appreciative of the time today. Thanks again. Rosalie Berne from Thermo Fisher Scientific, Senior Director of Global Operations. What a joy it was to have you on the show today. I am Mark Ostach, author of Courage to Connect, digital wellness expert, and a proud father and husband of a family of two, and 2 dogs, 2 kids, and a wonderful wife. We'll see you next time, and thank you so much for tuning in.